All right, if you stay right there, I'm going to ask Bill McGlashan to join us on stage. Bill is Bono's lead singer of the new band, right? Is that how you describe him?
I think that's fair.
We're going to talk about how to make money out of all of this. Bill, join us, please.
Hey, dude.
So Bill is dreamed up with Bono, the largest impact investing fund, but dreaming it up turned out to be not, the most difficult part was actually to make it happen and to get it on the ground and to make it work. And he's been able to do that. In his side job, he runs one of the largest private equity funds in the world. And Bill is also a college friend of mine. And so I will introduce him briefly by telling you guys a story that I don't think we've talked about in 35 years. Bill went to India when he was at Yale, and he traveled third class in the railroads in rural India, and he would notice that every train station you'd go to, beggars would come up to you and ask you for, hold out their hands. And Bill was eating an enormous sandwich, rich American kid in a small place in India, and he would offer it out. Now, for those of you who have been to India, you know that in India, people, when they want to say yes, shake their head. It's sort of, they go like this, which is sort of meant to be an okay. I am very happy to do this, right? And so they would go like that. Bill, being this American kid, assumed they were saying no. And he pulled back his sandwich. The person would start crying. They'd go to the next town. Same bed, a new set of beggars. They'd ask. Bill would offer. They'd go. He'd again say, son of a bitch, what are you doing? You don't want the sandwich? And he'd pull it back. And so what I thought I'd tell you, Bill, is you've been trying to help poor people for 35 years. Bono finally helped you to figure out how to do it.
Bono translated for me. That was a story. That was a story not meant to be shared. That was 35 years ago when our friendship began, and you just went and aired it out in front of this august audience.
So, tell us, Bill, what is impact investing? Why do you think it's going to change the world?
So, first, Victor, thank you for having me here. It's great to be at the 15th anniversary of the YES conference and to be up here with two very dear people to me on the stage. Impact investing is just very simply the joining of traditional investing mandates, which is to generate a return, to help build companies, to help companies succeed, with impact alongside that. It's the notion that the output of a business can create meaningful social and environmental progress, can create change, jobs, in some cases remedies for the environment, access to health care, access to renewable energy, while also generating great returns. And that's what we set out to accomplish with the RISE Fund. And what made the RISE Fund different was the fact that we did it at substantial scale, and the fact that we measured that impact in a way that wasn't a tummy rub, it wasn't a notion, but was instead something that was rigorous.
What strikes me about this is talk about your personal journey. Why did you come to this? Because seriously, I remember from 35 years ago, you were always a guy who struck me as they had this line about the American pilgrims. They wanted to do good and they wanted to do well. You were always trying to figure out how do you make an impact? But how do you also succeed? You were thinking of running for the Senate. You were thinking of what is it that can make an impact on the world? So how did you get to this place?
So right out of college, I started a nonprofit called World Service, trying to go and help in places like Tanzania, Costa Rica, other marginalized parts of the world in a traditional nonprofit NGO way. And I became convinced through that process that the solutions were not going to be achieved with just philanthropy and government alone, that we had to bring the dimension of commerce that Bono was talking about a few minutes ago to bear in order to make the kind of progress that was commensurate with the scale of the challenge. Africa needs 15 million jobs a year just to keep up with the demographics of the continent. So in order to solve these big, hairy, audacious problems that are captured by the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we had to activate business. So from the very beginning, my goal was to I pivoted away from that world and went into business and believed that the most exciting development would be businesses in places like Palo Alto, California, the Ukraine, India, China, Africa, building scale solutions to scale problems with brilliant entrepreneurs who can show us the way.
Bana, what attracted you about this? Because you've been working with business in other ways. What led you to this place?
It's somewhat humbling as an activist to realize that the role of entrepreneurial capitalism in taking people out of extreme poverty. That in the end, all the development assistance in the world, it's just bridging. It's just bridging, and that you need business to be involved. And one of to me, the most moral voice on the continent of Africa at the moment is a man called Mohammed Ibrahim. And he was a technologist. He worked in British Telecom, actually. And then he kind of left there and became this telecom billionaire. And he founded the Ibrahim Index. It's a corruption index. And he gives the Ibrahim Prize to leaders who leave office on time and without feathering their beds. And he said, if you really care, he challenged us all, if you really care about these people, you do business with us. Do business, trade with us. This is horizontal. Now we're on the same plane. And it really challenged me. And I started to think about it differently. And you know, as I was talking about hierarchical systems, I'm horizontal by nature. I'm in a band. My relationships are horizontal. They're not vertical. I don't want to be a boss. I don't want to have a boss. I'm in a band. It can be a pain in the ass. Democracy is. In my relationship with my wife, again, it's horizontal. It's very equal. My friends, the way we work together. I like bands. I think they're efficient. And in this, but you have to be careful who's in the band and in whose band you want to be in. And I knew that I needed to learn more about commerce, and I knew that I needed to have the right people with me. But I didn't want hippie kind of flowers in the hair, peace, love kind of thing. I come from punk rock. I wanted tough-minded, you know, badasses. And he's very kind, badass. But Bill McGlashan is a very brilliant investor, making very high returns for the people who invest with him, which are, by the way, you know, state pension funds of teachers, and you know, and he takes that very, very seriously. And he's really demanding of the returns. And I thought, well, if we can be as demanding about the impact as we are about the returns, this could really work. And Bill is working 18 hours a day consistently to do this, and I really feel lucky. I'm the bass player in this band, 4 strings, but they're cool. He's the singer.
So then the hard question, Bill. If one could achieve these returns, you know, the premise of a social impact fund is you're going to get high returns, but you're going to do good because of the projects you choose. If you can get the high returns, if people are not sacrificing returns, why wouldn't the market be finding these opportunities anyway? Why do you need something like a special designated vehicle like this?
Yeah, that's the right question. I mean, the revolutionary thing about the RISE Fund is that we're actually trying to quantify the impact. Every investment has an impact. It's a question of, is it a good impact? Is it a fairly mediocre impact, or is it a negative impact? You know, what on the spectrum is created by this business? The problem, the challenge the human race has had is we're not good at measuring or factoring externalities, you know, the other unintended consequence of a business, into the way we make decisions. The United States spends 65% of all healthcare dollars on the last 6 months of life. That's a multi-trillion-dollar decision that we made as a nation, not consciously necessarily, but if you were to measure that return versus early childhood education or a smart grid or growth infrastructure, I suspect we might have made a different decision than choosing to invest in that last 6 months of life. So bringing a clear lens on the impact of a business, positive, negative, neutral, and allowing capital to invest behind decisions that are informed by real fact is a very big change in the world. Historically, it's largely been notional. If you wanted to do impact investing, you had to do the deals that were obvious. We had to go to India and invest in rural poor healthcare solutions. Now we can invest in businesses that are very sophisticated, where the derivative effect creates real impact. That's a game changer. And my real ambition ultimately would be there's no such thing as impact investing. There's just investing. And we start measuring impact, risk, and return instead of just risk and return. And all of us think that way about the way we deploy our capital, because it's our right as citizens to know where our capital is being deployed and to know the effect of these very scalable, sustainable, innovative engines called business.
That's an incredibly powerful way to think about it, right? Every investment has an impact.
Yeah, I was just about to say that it's worth pausing on this because something has changed. It used to be that you could make money any way you wanted, be a brutal capitalist, and then you get your halo in the way that you give your money away. You become the philanthropist for your sins. And I think this next generation, particularly these millennials, are much more demanding of that. For them, it's not the way you give away your money that defines your corporate social responsibility. It's the way you make it. And that's a key change. And I think that's what RISE plugs into.
When you're trying to make projects succeed in these places, I'd ask both of you this question, because both of you have so much experience with it. Again, you come back to the issue you've raised time and time again, Bono, corruption. Do you feel like you've watched places where you've seen it go away, and do you have a sense as to what to do to make it go away? Because this is, you know, if you ask somebody at the IMF, what is Ukraine's biggest problem, they would say not Russia, but corruption.
Strangely enough, because it's a scourge in some other regards, technology. But technology, information technology, IT, information, I think is making it harder to hide. And I think, again, my excitement is with youthful spirits are coming through. I think it's getting harder to hide, but it, you know, that's some encouragement. Bill?
Yeah, you know, two examples of interesting technology. One that we were not part of is Aadhaar, which is the digital identity solution in India that created a digital identity for every person in India and allowed the government to distribute services directly to every individual. It eliminated billions and billions of dollars in corruption overnight in India. Paid for itself many times over. It's a fascinating solution for governments all over the world. We funded a company called Cellulant in Nigeria that was able to set up a technology platform using blockchain and a digital identity that connects 7 million farmers directly to the government, so that $500 million in support per year goes directly to these farmers, where before about 90% of that 500 was siphoned off in corruption between the time it left the government and ended up in the hands of the 7 million farmers. The effect of it that we're measuring is a 30% uplift in income from these farmers, 30%, which in that environment is completely transformative. So I agree with the point Bono's made. There is real hope in the form of of innovative business solutions that create transparency inherent in their business model in these markets.
What about the culture of corruption and political corruption at the top? Because here what you're describing is how to kind of disintermediate and get around. You're absolutely right about the Indian program. What it did was get the benefits directly to every individual, so the guys in the middle who were collecting all these government benefits and pocketing them were disintermediated by the technology. But you still have the problem of corruption at the top. And I think about your example of Mo Ibrahim, who is such an admirable figure. This guy set up a prize, which, as Bono said, it goes to an African leader who has left office voluntarily and without being corrupt. And here was the most brave thing that Mo Ibrahim did. He said, if nobody in Africa qualifies, there will be no prize given that year. And for 6 years in a row, they did not give a prize. And he said, I don't care. We have the prize, but it's only going to be given on legitimate criteria. When you looked at that level, you know, you've met many honest leaders, many corrupt leaders. What are your thoughts about how, you know, how do you make sure you get a Mandela and not a Mobutu?
Yeah, in Africa they have a proverb. It's a wild one. Pray that we do not discover oil. Because when you discover oil, then the bad guys arrive. And it's shocking. But I do believe the society works through that. In Ireland, we had corruption. And, you know, I'm sure we still have to a degree, but it's not very present. I'm not aware of it. But, you know, growing up in the 70s, I remember, you know, I think societies, the people in the end, want away from nepotism, want into it's institution building. It's all stuff that we take for granted. But I'm actually, I would not feel. I feel that there'll be bigger problems to solve than corruption as we go forward. I think corruption will be less and less of a problem. I think autocracy might become a bigger problem. For instance, African leaders that I know, they look east rather than west. They look to Lee Kuan Yew. They look to Singapore. You know, you see somebody like President Kagame of Rwanda, and you just know he's looking at Singapore. He's doing an amazing job, but he's a tough guy. He's a tough dude.
Bill, what do you think are the areas where impact investing can have the biggest, you know, impact? When you look out there and you said, this is where entrepreneurial capitalism can make the biggest difference.
So it's remarkably widespread. Contrary to what we thought going into this journey, we've now invested a substantial portion of the $2 billion of capital, and we've demonstrated we can actually measure the impact in a way that's quite remarkable in terms of the multiple of money that we can deliver, and it's across healthcare, education, financial services, technology generally, empowering all of these different sectors, infrastructure. So we have found that it maps to society generally. You can find innovation and impact in every sector of society today.
Can I talk about one of the people we haven't yet managed to invest in, but we really want to? I don't know if that's cool. Is that okay? It's
You're
just
allowed
so
to do
exciting.
anything.
You gotta see this. This is just, for me, it's just one of the most exciting things I've ever been involved in. But in Rwanda, President Kagame has had a vision of wanting Rwanda to be a sort of tech hub. And so a company arrives out of Northern California with an idea to use drones to get to the difficult topography that is Rwanda, get blood supplies, if there's whatever. And this company's called Zipline Drones. And if you just go online after this and just check out, there's lots of stuff online on it. It's working now. It's not like this is not a concept. Rwanda is today supplied. Every corner of Rwanda is supplied by this technology, this futuristic technology. And they're working brilliantly. It's a company out of, I guess it's Palo Alto. And I just think that just gives me such you're talking about hope and excitement. When I see the combination of the brilliant local physicians working with the best of technology, I get very, very, it's a very emotional thing for me to look at that. That's one of the stories.
All right, we have to wrap up, but I want you to just keep going on one thought. What is your message to the young people here? Because there are actually a lot of young people. There's a young leaders program. What do you say to them?
Don't listen to me or your parents.
Thank you, Bill McGlashan. Thank you, Bono. If you can all give a round of applause, but then don't go. We have another special guest. I don't know if we have, if he has arrived yet. 10 more minutes, all right. All right, so we can keep going. Bono's an Irish storyteller. He can keep going. He can keep going for forever. So, Bill, let me then ask you this: when you look around geographically, what are the most exciting places that seem like this is all working?
And I want to answer your previous question. What do you say to the young people, too? Is that what we're finding is the most compelling impact that we're funding around the world, billions of dollars being invested, is funding young people who are building great new innovative companies. And that's where the real promise is, I think, is millennials are 2 times more likely to work for a company that has impact, and they're 3 times more likely to buy from a company that has impact. They're completely aligned with this story that Bono was describing. That's precisely what they want to do with their lives. So that, to me, my message would be keep doing that, because that's the hope for the world. In terms of the most exciting geographies, we're investing all over the world. The developed world, Europe, US, is about 70% of what we've invested so far in the fund. India, China, Africa, Southeast Asia. We're finding exciting growth companies all over the world. As you mentioned earlier, we're one of the largest growth equity firms in the world, so we already invest in all these places. And the challenge of the Rise Fund, which is our band, has been to find those companies that are achieving both great financial return, but also great impact in a collinear way. And we're, again, finding that across the same geographies that we've found growth investments for 20 years now.
Tell us something about how you keep going. You've got a rock band. You're doing one. You go around meeting world leaders who want to meet with you. You've got this investment fund. You've got other stuff going on. You own hotels. You own. How do you manage to do all of this? Do you have like a second day that none of us know about?
My missus thinks I have multi-personality disorder. I don't see any difference in any of these projects. To me, they're all the same thing. For me, there are these businesses, when I talk about zipline drones, to me it's like a song. It's just a beautiful song. As I was saying earlier about the melody, it just feels inevitable. I remember, I don't know if anyone remembers I'm sure her music is still, to me, one of the most inspiring. She's one of the greatest singers on earth. But Björk, she's from Iceland. And I remember her saying that, in Iceland, music, a musician is the same as carpenter. And, it's a craft. And if the chair is beautiful, then it's a work of art. If it's an ugly chair, it's an ugly chair. It's an ugly song. And what I liked about it was this sort of humility of saying that artists are not somehow special people. People who in business who get people jobs. I mean, some of the biggest assholes I've ever met are in music. I might be one of them. But some of the most pure people I've met can be in business. It's not what you think. So I don't see any difference. I just see it all as the same thing. And it's all creativity. It's all part of a creative life. the work comes out of the life. The life has to be, I hope that my life is one of an artist and a fellow pilgrim with you and Bill and anyone else in here who shares values that, you know, people are more important than ideas.
You think these values, your values, will prevail in the long run? Do you believe in Martin Luther King's line, the arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice?
I believe President Obama's line that it zigzags. And I think recent times remind us that we shouldn't take anything for granted. And we must not agonize, instead organize, as I said earlier. And as long as we organize and stand together and work together, then I think anything's possible. And I believe in people's ability, but I just don't finally believe that we can take any of it for granted.
Bono, Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you.